Jesus, a Novel, Chapter 7, Art Class. Behind the dark glasses, behind the blackened windows, in the back seat of a black limousine, across the street from the Paradise Tower, sat Sebastian Damien Gauntrifaux. "Is that him?" asked the driver. "Yes, sir." "Keep your distance, but follow him." Sebastian Gauntrifaux was the Lord Most High of a religion called the Ineffable Ba'al. He was wearing his usual black, full-length robe with a huge ruby hanging from a chain around his neck. A black Doberman was sitting next to him on the seat, dozing off. The dog had a collar studded with smaller but matching red rubies. Sebastian stroked the head of the dog as he continued to stare across the street. Jesus and his crew came barreling out of the Paradise Tower, looking like they were making a prison break, skipping and running and laughing. "Undignified," muttered Sebastian under his breath. He represented a doctrine that placed high emphasis on the perception of dignity. The belief system of the Ineffable Ba'al was a strange blend of the ancient religion that focused on fertility, the fertility of the earth through rain, and human fertility through sexuality, and a complex web of mystical rituals that leaned toward the bizarre. Most adherents were either wealthy, powerful, or well on their way to becoming one of the two. You might think Baal worship and pleasurism via the free love temples might be cousins, but nobody in our culture confused the two. If there was any relationship to be discerned between these belief systems, the free lovers would be considered the uneducated bastard child of Baal, living in the back hills of Appalachia, shirtless, shoeless, and sipping on moonshine. Of course, the free lovers didn't much appreciate that assessment, but Baal made sure its family tree cast a disparaging shadow on the scraggly weed called pleasurism. Jesus, the Pied Piper du jour, turned the corner onto 3rd Avenue. It took several minutes for the lengthy tail of the trailing posse to wag its way around the corner. "How does he get all these suckers to follow him?" thought Sebastian. The limo crept around the corner just in time to see Jesus walk into Lieu d'Art, one of the more exclusive art galleries in town. Sebastian instantly became unglued and slapped the back of the seat in anger. Marduk, his Doberman, jumped and barked, startled by the sudden movement. The driver sank a bit lower in his seat, looking sideways into the rearview mirror from under his chauffeur's hat. Lieu d'Art was owned jointly by Sebastian and members of Baal. In fact, almost every art gallery from New York to LA was owned at least partially by this group. The Ineffable Consortium, as their business arm was called, had a stranglehold on most of the serious art in the country, particularly the medium of painting. It didn't seem to bother them that an art form that encouraged the creative freedom of expression should be regulated with a monopoly like Iron Fist. "So why would this Jesus be walking into my gallery?" Sebastian wondered to himself. "He obviously could never afford so much as a sliver of a paint chip coming from my walls. Hand me my binoculars." The curator of Lieu d'Art saw the mob walking through his front door and knew immediately this was not the classe supérieure with deep pockets. Maddie was still riding on Jesus' back, and the curator could plainly see the slave number on her hand. "May I help you?" he asked. Read, "This isn't your kind of establishment. You may want to leave now." Jesus said, "I know this is an odd request, but I need a 2-by-3-foot blank canvas, a nice set of brushes, a palette with a decent spectrum of acrylics. Oh, and an easel would be nice. But, by the way, Sebastian sent me here. He commissioned this painting I'm about to do." Jesus and the curator looked at each other without moving. Maddie still on his back. I know you have everything I need in the back room, Jesus continued. Would you like me to go get it? No, I can retrieve it for you. He left for the back room. Jesus cleared a space by the front window where he would have plenty of light. The canvas arrived along with everything else that Jesus had asked for. He sat Maddie down on a bench across from him. Has anyone ever painted a portrait of you, Maddie? Her eyes grew big. She broke out into a smile that answered his question. Okay, well, I'm going to need you to sit still for a half hour or so. He pulled his cell phone from his pocket, queued up I Am a Poor Wayfaring Stranger by Kristen Asbjornsen, and he was already at work. He squeezed about 10 colors onto his palette and began mixing them into various shades. Then his brush made a dive into the paint and he was off. The front of the binoculars were resting against the rear side window of the limo as Sebastian watched Jesus almost throwing paint at the canvas. Sebastian was a fairly accomplished painter himself, having done several hundred works with his paintings selling for thousands apiece. But as he watched, he knew he was witnessing something quite unusual. Jesus wasn't just painting a likeness of this girl. He was expressing her feelings through his brushstrokes. In looking at the painting, still developing, it almost appeared that he knew more about her than she knew about herself. It was brilliant, and he despised it. It would have been one thing if a prodigy arrived with training, credentials, and an artistic passport, but this hobo had no papers and no pedigree. Jesus turned his stomach. Everything about him repulsed Sebastian. Jesus was the antithesis of who he was and what he believed. Still, the painting was taking his breath away. On the surface, it had an indescribable innocence, but just below the surface, you could see pain that had left years of scars. Sebastian could almost feel the ragged edges of the scars coming through the eyes on the canvas. Her eyes were looking straight at him. He finally had to turn the binoculars elsewhere. Never before had he felt uncomfortable staring into the eyes of a painting. Jesus had the song on repeat, and when it finished its sixth play through, he set down his brush. Peter, the other visual artist in the room, was standing, gaping at the work. His eyes met Jesus' eyes, and Peter said, Master, I'm ashamed of my drawing on your arm. This is inspired. I didn't know. Jesus put his hand on Peter's shoulder and gave it a squeeze. Maddie looked up at Jesus as if to say, Can I see it? He reached his hand out to her in an invitation. She stood and walked around to the front of the painting, staring for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute. I saw tears well up in her eyes, and she leaned her head into Jesus' chest, still looking intently at the painting. She finally said, Am I really that beautiful? To me, yes, far more beautiful than this. Bartholomew stated dryly, Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in the mirror. Jesus lifted the painting from the easel. The curator said nervously, Would you like me to deliver the painting to Sebastian? Jesus said, No, I'll take care of it. Sebastian was looking down, texting with an art dealer friend when the chauffeur said, Sir, what? He responded, still not looking up. Sir. There was a rap on the window right beside Sebastian's head. Marduk jumped up growling. Sebastian turned to look. Jesus was standing right beside the window, waiting for Sebastian to open it. Sebastian grabbed the ruby collar to restrain Marduk and slowly lowered the window. Yes, he said, as if all this was new to him. Jesus smiled. Hello, Sebastian. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Pause. I know how much you enjoy art. You're quite a painter in your own right, but your collection is lacking in certain areas. So I painted this specifically for you to fill a void. Jesus continued, these are honest eyes, eyes that will look deep within you, whether you invite them or not. If a painting is true enough, you don't evaluate it, it evaluates you. Sebastian never responded. Jesus continued, you might want to be careful where you hang this because she will see you. Jesus turned the painting toward him. Sebastian looked away. And once she sees you, you will forever see yourself through her eyes. There was an uncomfortable silence. Jesus continued, anyhow, this is my gift to you. Sebastian nodded a thank you as he pulled the painting through the window. I'd love to have lunch with you someday, Sebastian, just to talk. Let me know if you're interested. Have a good day. Jesus started to reach through the window to pet Marduk, but the growl and the teeth made him pull his hand back. The window ascended and the limo pulled away. Sebastian immediately texted Brunel, the curator of Lieu d'Art. Do not tell a soul about what just happened. That painting does not exist. You did not see it.